In this video, I'm going to showcase a very underrated opening which will increase your rating points, your elo points for sure. It's called the SCOTCH GAMBIT. It's one of my favorite openings. It's a dynamic tactical opening which will give you very quick and easy wins in just a couple of moves, and even if your opponent knows what they're doing, you will often end up in a very equal but very dynamic and tactical and good position. Now, if you end up liking this video, well, I guess make sure to like this video, subscribe. I'm looking to gain 1,000 subscribers in the first year of making YouTube. So every subscription like will help me massively. And yeah, let's dive into the video. So let's dive into the SCOTCH GAMBIT. Now the first important thing to know is that the SCOTCH GAMBIT is a variant on the normal SCOTCH opening, which is e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. And normally after we play d4 and black takes, we take back with the knight. This is called the normal SCOTCH opening. But instead of taking back, we actually play bishop to c4. We sacrifice a pawn in order to develop our pieces very quickly and go for a quick attack. Now here black has plenty of moves they can play. We are going to take a look at the three most popular moves, which are bishop c5, bishop b4 and knight f6. And after that we will look at all the sidelines and what to do against them. The first move we're going to take a look at is the most popular move and probably the move you will face the most, which is bishop to c5. Now this move is aimed at developing a piece and also defending the extra pawn. And here we have basically two options which I'm going to share with you guys. The first one is knight to g5. Now if you have played the fried liver before, this move might seem familiar, because the point of this move is to simply attack f7, and if our opponent makes a random move, let's say d6, we can simply take the pawn, and not only do we win a pawn, we also fork the rook and the queen. So this is completely winning already. Now black only has one move to prevent this, which is knight to h6. But here we play one of my favorite concepts in chess, which is that if our opponent tries to prevent a certain move, we play it anyways. Here we can still take on f7, black can take back. Here we take the knight with check. We get the king out of the center basically, and now we check the king and fork the king and the bishop. Now black most likely will simply move back, of course, they won't step forward very often, which is simply a bad move. And here we can simply take the bishop and get our material back. Now the interesting thing about this line is that it actually doesn't win us any material. It looked quite fancy, but in the end material is even. But I still quite like it, simply because the black's king is so weak, it has already moved, it cannot castle anymore. And the only thing we need to worry about is our queen. Of course black can make a move like d6, attacking our queen, but here I like to just play queen to h5. Putting our queen in quite a safe spot, and here it can also assist some future attack, like bishop to g5 for example, in the future attacking the queen. And our next couple of moves are quite easy here. We just want to castle. We just want to develop our queenside pieces and get quite a normal position on our side. And black will always have this problem of a weak king. Now the second option after bishop to c5 is to play the move c3, which according to the engine is a little bit better than a previous line with knight to g5. The point is actually quite similar here, because if black takes the pawn, we have bishop takes f7, again making use of this weakness on f7, because if black takes the bishop, which is the best move, we can play queen to d5, again forking the bishop and the king. Now of course the most popular move for black here is to simply move the king back, but if black decides to step forward, well, first of all here we have mate in 1 with queen to f5, and the second move, if they play queen to f6, is to play bishop g5 check first. Now black has only one move. Here we play queen to f5, and after king to h5, you can already see this is quite bad for black, because here we have a pawn checkmate actually with g4, quite fancy. But of course black probably won't put their king into the center of the board. They won't step forward. They probably will, let's see, they probably will step back here. And if they step back, we can simply take the bishop here. And this is basically, according to the engine, an improved version of the line I showed before with knight to g5. And the reason why is basically because we have a knight developed here already. The king is, of course, again, very weak. And again, our plan is quite easy. We just want to take this pawn, we want to develop our pieces, and castle our king to safety, and have a very pleasant game, because black's king is so weak and it cannot castle anymore. After we play c3, of course black doesn't need to take our pawn. They can also ignore it and play a move like knight f6, which we will take a look later on in the video. Or they can make a move like d6, aiming at developing their bishop. And here I simply like to take the pawn with our own pawn. And the reason why is simply because we grab the whole center, we win a tempo on the bishop, which needs to move back or forward. And this is very pleasant for us. And although this really isn't a gambit anymore, it's still very pleasant. We have the whole center, our pieces are well developed already, we can castle to safety, and we simply have a good position here. Now the second move we're going to take a look at after bishop to c4 is to move bishop b4 check. Now this move is also kind of aimed at saving this pawn in a sense, right? Because here the only move really for us is to play c3 and they can simply trade off this pawn. And here we have already an option here. We can take with the knight, which is the more, I guess, classical, more professional way of playing this, but I really like pawn takes. Now, the first reason why I like pawn takes is because after they play maybe bishop c4, which is a very natural looking move. Well, we have the same tactic, of course. This might seem very familiar, because here we can take the pawn again with our bishop, and after queen to d5, we basically, in a sense, transpose into the same kind of position in which black will likely move back and we can take the extra bishop. Not the extra bishop, but we can win the bishop back. Now after, of course, this sequence of pawn c3 takes, black doesn't need to move the bishop back to f5, of course. It's a blunder, so most likely our opponents won't do that. And if they, for example, play bishop a5, the most popular move here, well, we have a little bit of a problem, although not really. The point here is that we don't really have any like attacking chances anymore. We don't have tactics straight away. For example, queen d5 might seem tempting, but the bishop is defended and this pawn can be defended by queen to e7, for example. And here we want to simply play with a pawn down, but prioritize our development. So here we simply want to castle. Well, black will make a move like d6. We just want to get our pieces out and go for a very active position here. But there isn't anything special here I want to show. But it's very important to know that even in positions like this, although we're down a pawn, the position according to the engine is still equal and we still have a lot of play left. In the future we can always again try maybe moves like knight g5, queen h5, going for some kind of checkmate. It's still very aggressive and very good. But here we don't have like a direct way to win the game or win material. Now the third move I'm going to show is the best move according to the engine and the move that's played most often by GMs and strong players in general, which is the move knight f6. And on the surface this move already looks quite dangerous, right? Because e5 looks very unpleasant for black. And here first of all I will show kind of the main line. Now you won't face this too often if you're anything below 1800, I guess. Simply because, well, black has to know the theory, because otherwise they can lose very quickly. Now the main move is d5, which is already quite a committal move, right? Because although you attack the bishop, I can take the knight with white, which I won't do, but it already looks quite complicated, so you have to know what you're doing here, right? And the move here for white is to play bishop to b5, pinning the knight to the king. Now black has to move the knight, and often they want to play into the center, right, with knight to e5, sorry, e4. And here we simply want to take the pawn. And after bishop d7, which defends against the pin, which we have a lot of pressure on, sorry. This way, of course, the position is quite equal. And that's also why I love the Scotch Gambit in a way, because even if black knows the best moves and plays them, well, we still end up in a normal position, quite an equal position, which is still very tactical, very dynamic, and I would say very, very pleasant for white. Now, in many gambits, if the opponent knows what they're doing, they will end up in a better position, but in the Scotch, they won't, which is great. And again, the move knight f6 is quite risky in itself, because if our opponent doesn't know what they're doing, or they don't know all the theory, it's really dangerous moves. In a way in which I can show that really is if they play queen to e7 here. Now the point of queen to e7 is to pin the pawn to our king, so we cannot take the knight right away, but here we simply want to castle. The point of castling here is that after black takes the actual pawn, we take back and black takes, well, we win the queen and we eventually will win the game, because here the queen is pinned to the king, which is already quite dangerous. Now here black is forced to give up their queen and we're simply up material. Now of course black won't do this too often if they know what they're doing, but even if they don't take the pawn here, it's still dangerous, because what to do with the knight first of all, like if they play this, we can still play really rook e1 and still they cannot really take here. He can take back, and after the knight takes here, well, first of all we have f4 for example, simply winning the knight or winning the queen. So this is quite dangerous already for black. So we are very happy if black actually plays the move queen to e7 here. The last move I want to take a look at in this line is the move knight g4 right away. Right here, black doesn't really need to worry about their queen all that much, and they can attack this pawn right away. Now here again, we just want to castle, and this can get very dangerous for black very quickly, because here again, if black takes the pawn, we can take back, and here black kind of has the same problem, although now with the knight. This knight is basically lost. They have to defend this knight first of all, and no matter how they do it, we can simply play f4 on the next move. This knight is pinned and we simply win the knight on the next move, whatever black does really. So this is very dangerous for black. Black really has to know what they're doing after they play knight f6 in the first place, because if they don't, it can get very ugly very quickly. Now finally, I want to take a look at all the other moves black might play here. Of course, the main moves, bishop c5, bishop b4, knight f6, they're all aimed at defending this pawn. Even knight f6 is kind of aimed at defending this pawn in a tactical way, because if you take here, black can take here, which we don't want to allow, of course, which I showed before. So if black decides to not defend the pawn and play a move like d6, my recommendation here is to simply take the pawn. This also goes for moves like bishop e7 or maybe h6, preventing knight g5. And the reason why is basically we get into an improved Scotch. Because normally in the Scotch, I can quickly show this, after takes, black really wants to make, okay wait, sorry, they don't need to take back the knight of course, but they really want to make active moves here, like bishop c5, knight f6, kind of similar moves we showed before in the Scotch Gambit. Because if they play passively, we simply have a knight in the center, we can put a bishop here, which is literally a transposition into the line I showed before here. We have a nice pawn in the center, our pieces are well developed, and this is basically good for us. Black really needs to play active. So if, in our variation in the Scotch Gambit, well, black makes a move like d6, we simply want to take her and have a better position. Of course, you can also choose to play it in more Gambit-like style, like castling for example, giving, well, black a chance to kind of transpose into similar positions here, although here of course after e5 black can take, which isn't all that great for us. But yeah, so I will just recommend taking the pawn if black plays anything else here, like h6 again, maybe even bishop e7. I just recommend taking this pawn. So I guess this was the Scotch opening. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, learned something from it, and yeah, hopefully I see you guys in the next video.